This is Akashvani. Time for a weekly program, Our Guest. I hand over the mic to the show host, Nitish Arora, for the same.
From 2nd of October to the 8th of October, we observe World Wildlife Week, and the challenges that the wildlife is facing are immense. And the biggest challenge faced by the wildlife is by the humans. Now, how can humans check themselves? That is a big question. Wildlife now, apart from encouraging it in many other ways, what we are doing is that we are encouraging the tourism part of it also. They're taking people in hordes to watch or view wildlife, I think, which is a better idea when they are in the wilds instead of having them in the zoos. But then there are other challenges that the wildlife is facing. I am fortunate to have with me in the studios today as our guest Mr. Mani Arora. He is the founder of Impact Investor. It's a social enterprise. Apart from that, in the field, he has traveled a lot, worked on issues related to wildlife also. Am I right, Mani?
That's right. I'm equally fortunate to be here with you, Nitish. Thank you.
So, welcome to the studios. Since it is Wildlife Week, and I understand that only a few months ago you were working on a project in Arunachal Pradesh, which was themed at around wildlife. What exactly was that?
Sure. So, at Impact Investors, we primarily work at the intersection of preserving and restoring ecology, preserving cultures which are becoming extinct at a very fast pace to modernization and globalization, and also bringing an economic reform to the villages of India. So in Arunachal Pradesh, we had been working on a very interesting project in very, very remote parts of Arunachal, right on the borders of India, China. So many of these communities in Arunachal have traditionally been hunters, which means from grandfathers till or to the young people now, especially men, have been trained by their family members in hunting. So while earlier hunting used to be a matter of survival, it no longer is a matter of survival. Now it is more about pride, going into the forest and aiming for a big game. And this had been leading to habitat loss, this rampant and unchecked hunting and poaching, even though there are very strict laws. However, sometimes it's not possible to control issues only through laws at a very micro or a grassroots level. So we wanted to address
for a profession which has come to them through inheritance. So that is additional pride for them to continue with it.
Absolutely.
So the laws sometimes fail to dissuade them from going for hunting.
Agree. So when we delved into the situation at the grassroots, we realized we have to identify, as you said, the pride that is associated with hunting. We had to identify the social framework which required a change. So during our intervention, we realized that these men who had been going for hunting actually know the nook and corner of the forests. They know which tree has which bird and which part of the forest has which animal. And these are some of the interesting things which many...
Their glossary of fauna and flora is far beyond what is reported in books or in bookish knowledge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of traditional and indigenous knowledge which is not really documented in books, which these people carry, even to an extent of knowing which plant has what exact medicinal use, because they have been dependent on forests for a very, very long period of time, and their lifestyle is very deeply connected to nature. So how do we basically find an opportunity in all these challenges? And some of these challenges have led to habitat loss of red panda, for example. So one of the teams we've been working with on ground is specifically working towards red panda conservation, because it's not just about red panda, it's also about the flora that red panda interacts with. It's about the entire ecosystem that the red panda interacts with. So preserving the habitat of one animal eventually means we are preserving the entire ecosystem that is interconnected. So coming back to how we identified an opportunity in the challenge, we realized that these are the kind of experiences which many wildlife enthusiasts from all over the world come for to places like India, to these remote hinterlands in Arunachal Pradesh, and also people who are interested in experiencing a very rustic, off the beat, authentic, untouched hospitality where you're going into a village and staying in, for example, Arunachal has a lot of bamboo houses. So instead of staying in a hotel, you're staying in a traditionally built bamboo house where served a freshly cooked meal on the chulha with ingredients that are directly either coming from the farm or from the forest. So that is where the intersection of responsible tourism for us took place with wildlife conservation. It definitely took us time because it was a matter of pride, but we worked around with the same pride and worked with these people. And
but there's some other agencies also involved in this project of responsible tourism and wildlife conservation in the Arunachal Pradesh.
There have been some grassroots organizations, individuals, as well as we've been working closely with Indian Army in Arunachal Pradesh. So without their support, it wouldn't have been possible for us to, reach these far-flung places.
So what was the target when you started with this kind of experience there in the Arunachal? The target was to dissuade these people away from their traditional hunting methods, conservation per se, or was there any bigger, larger target, and what were the kind of achievements? How longer did you work there in the field, and the work must still be going on?
Yes, the work is still going on and there's a long way to go. And the target has been at an intersection of ecological preservation. We are preserving a wildlife ecosystem which is at threat because of over interference of human beings. And then we are preserving an ecosystem that preserves wildlife and also bringing an economic reform through alternative and sustainable means of income to these villages.
I was coming to that only. What are the kind of alternatives that you provided to them? Because as you only said that this was a matter of pride for them also, but now hunting is no longer kind of a profession which they need to follow. So what are the kind of alternatives you were able to provide to these people who were earlier on solely dependent on the hunting?
So we started with responsible tourism. For example, these men who would earlier go for hunting into the forest now take tourists from different parts of the world and they're acting as tour guides. So preserving the knowledge that they've had for ages and generations, they're using that now for
I hope they are not guiding the tourists on the traditional methods of hunting.
No. At their heart, something has shifted for them. They now can relate that how destroying the home of a wild animal can feel like. There's a sense of empathy which was missing earlier that is now there, and that is the driving factor for them. And we've also involved a lot of young people who are more receptive to these innovative ideas. And while men are going into the forest for and acting as wildlife tourism guides, the women are doing the regular chores at homes and running the homestays and welcoming the guests. And slowly, when this shift in responsible tourism is taking place, we are also identifying what are the other existing crafts which can be strengthened, or other forms of arts in the local region which can be revived and integrated with tourism. For example, there's a lot of wild bamboo in all of the Northeast. So some of these folks are now doing bamboo basket making workshops with the tourists.
Which was also a very traditional kind of a thing, because they've been following that practice since long, but now I think they're doing it for the market now. Is it like that?
Absolutely. Earlier they would weave these baskets to go out and get some, wild animals back. Now they are teaching tourists how to weave these baskets as something they can just use for other purposes than hunting. So something which has been a very integral part of their life is now also an art which they are teaching to others. And there was a very interesting shift I personally saw when I was in Northeast a couple of years ago. We realized that the young generation, the school and college going generation, doesn't know that art and they find it very boring. However, the grandfathers and grandmothers would know. So when some of these young people see tourists from outside coming and learning and being excited about this art, they start becoming curious. Oh, I also want to learn.
So the revival of the many other traditional things apart from hunting is something which is important and could be a game changer.
Absolutely. Even agriculture is something we're focusing on because the soil is very, very rich in these parts. There's no pollution. The water is coming straight from glaciers and is very rich in minerals and micronutrients. So most of the food ingredients, especially millets and traditional crops which these farming communities grow, are actually being considered as superfoods in the cities now. And many of these millets are also now being suggested by health experts to reverse a lot of lifestyle-based diseases.
How long was this project of yours, the responsible tourism and wildlife conservation in the Northeast, in Arunachal per se? And was there any perceptible change? Are you still monitoring and following it?
We're still monitoring and following up. Our active intervention was for up to a year, we can say, including few weeks of on-ground training in hospitality, conservation, responsible tourism practices. And now when we have stepped back, we are working towards providing a market linkage to the communities for tourism, for their local products.
You said that responsible tourism, when we invite tourists for wildlife, there is also some responsibility that should be there with the tourists who are arriving at such destinations. Anything more that you want to add to that as to how responsible they should be and what are the kind of mistakes they are making in while venturing out in the wild while we round up this edition of Our Guest?
I love this question. There's a huge responsibility we as city slickers or tourists need to take when we enter these ecologically and culturally fragile zones. When we're going into cultures like these, we have to know that we may potentially carry a culture which can influence their culture. And at the same time, we have to be conscious that are we being respectful of their culture and tradition? And are we trying to be curious and are we trying to learn about their lifestyle and their culture? Because they're really opening our homes to us as tourists. And it's very, very important that we learn and respect that what their day-to-day lifestyle or culture consists of and how can we be an integral part of it. This is a very common question which comes up in many debates in responsible tourism, that how do we not end up using these local communities as just props to showcase responsible tourism, but actually commit to responsible tourism, be it about not carrying single-use plastic when we're going to these places because they don't have any municipality through which they can responsibly dispose of plastic waste, for example. And many of these villages don't have shops or commercial markets, so there's no plastic as such. They don't know how to deal with plastic. So we don't want these places to become dumping grounds for non-biodegradable waste. And also very small minor things like we're going there, if we can be more curious to learn about their more local music, craft, art, dance, culture, language, instead of carrying our own speakers and blasting music. Yeah, very basic things, but things which make a huge and significant impact.
And how about when you are in the wild? I mean, when you're going in the wild for the tourism, not in these communities, you said that not carrying out music with you. I think there are people who would, when they go for a jungle safari, would want to take along some speakers and have a wild party. And I wonder if the animals come out and say that, who is wilder, you or us?
Absolutely. Well, it's very important to refrain from any behavior which can trigger any kind of fear in the wild beings, because when they're attacking or, getting into the fight tendency, they're only doing that as a defense mechanism. It's very important to maintain a respectable distance from wildlife when we are in these ecologically fragile zones. And also to be conscious of the kind of colors we're wearing, because we're very sensitive to colors, to smells. We shouldn't be wearing perfumes or any artificial fragrances when we're entering these spaces. And wear colors which are earthy, which blend with nature, not make any noises, not get too excited when we are spotting any wildlife, and also be responsible for our own safety.
And listen to your guide.
Absolutely.
And the tourist guide that you have trained now.
Yes, thanks for saying that.
And then again, refrain from carrying your trash, throwing that there. Keep your garbage with you. Bring it back to your own respective places where it can be disposed of in a proper scientific manner. I think we are running short of time. It was very interesting to have an insight into the work that you have been doing. Anything more that you want to share?
I would just say that we, as part of nature, we love being part of nature, going to wildlife. It's great as we connect more and more with these experiences. If we can bring a sense of responsibility to it, that will make sure that our grandchildren also get to see wildlife and
not in the zoos, but in the wild.
Exactly.
Mani, thank you so very much for sparing your time and being our guest today. Thank you.
You were listening to the weekly program Our Guest, that is broadcast every Monday at 9:15 a.m. Don't forget to tune in next week, same day, same time and same frequency for more on Our Guest. Have a nice day.